Chapter 36, Missing Life. The days at Pelican Bay began at 6 o'clock in the morning with the bird bath. Plugging up the sink with plastic, filling it with lukewarm water, dumping it over your head with the used milk carton, then soaping up and rinsing as needed. There was always a morning cup of hot brewed coffee. Inmates made it with a makeshift immersion heater, created out of headphone wires and staples, plugged into the TV cord. Boxer did a few exercises before the breakfast food tray arrived. All meals in the shoe were brought to your cell and shoved through a small slot in the door, just like feeding animals at the zoo. Boxer usually wore away the morning hours, writing letters, reading, studying for a correspondence course, and waiting for the lunch tray to arrive. He could always tell what the other inmates in his pod were doing by the sounds he heard. The rustling of paper told me someone was reading. The squeak of a tennis shoe signaled exercise. Muffled dialogue meant someone was watching TV. Inmates were required to use special headphones, little earbuds inserted into the inner ear, to listen to television quietly. However, ears got sore with the buds stuck inside during a long day of TV watching. So inmates took an 8 by 11 piece of paper, rolled it up into the shape of a megaphone, and placed the earbud inside the small end. The result was a small cone-shaped speaker that amplified the sound. It was placed above the television or on a bunk, and an inmate wouldn't have to wear the earbud. Televisions are prized possessions. All have a clear plastic outer shell so guards can see that no parts are missing or nothing is hidden inside. An inmate loses his set forever if a shank is made from TV parts. As a consequence, Boxer explained, not many weapons are made from television sets. Some of the inmates sit in their cell with the light off and watch television all day long, wasting away. Those are the people who go nuts in the shoe, according to Boxer. Stagnation in prison is intellectual death. There are inmates who do nothing but watch the soap operas and Spanish novellas. They are called soap opera connoisseurs, and some of them are nearly brain dead. Arguably, the TV for them is much like a life support system, because if someone pulled the plug on the set, they die. Even Boxer admitted, I watched Days of Our Lives every afternoon for 11 years straight. Boxer observed a number of the Mexican Mafia members, including Daryl Knight Albaca, studied Nahua most of the day. The ancient Aztec language is used to communicate back and forth between cells without correctional officers understanding the conversation. It's used in correspondence too. Chess is a popular game in prison, and some of the great players believe they could kill Boris Spassky's king without ever using a shank. Boxer noted, they have 24 hours a day to study the game. Inmate chess masters each have a numbered board in their cell, and they shout out their moves to their opponent down the row. The opponent is never seated across from you unless the match is with a cellmate. Bodies that don't take advantage of the exercise time atrophy as quickly as the minds that watch TV all day. Plus, a visit to the rec area is the only chance a shoe inmate gets to look up into the open sky, usually a cloudy one in a frequently rain-soaked Crescent City. Those minutes of looking toward the heavens through a wire mesh screen are the only connection to the great outdoors. The afternoons are like mornings, and the nights are like afternoons until an inmate turns off his cell lights. It's a lonely life too. The loneliness eats away at you, Boxer said. I've often felt alone. You are alone, and you are lonely. The lack of physical contact is excruciating. How can you value the loss of something as simple as the smell of a girl's skin in your nose? Asked Renee. All things considered, Boxer felt that the shoe didn't bother me all that much. He spent 10 years locked up in the Pelican Bay shoe, and of his 10 years in prison and jail before that were spent in quasi-solitary confinement, high power, and administrative segregation. The personality of an extrovert forced him to maintain interaction with people even when I didn't feel good. Mechanically, he seemed fine, but I knew the isolation was taking a toll on me. By the late 1990s, he'd experienced a few more anxiety attacks. On one occasion, Thopo Peters arranged for him to be called out to the visiting room so they could talk. On the way there, He felt that same dread, a fearful anticipation that cramped his lungs and stole his breath. Boxer began to quantify the depth of despair and depression. On the general population yard, there was noise from soccer games, basketball, the verbal jostling between inmates, and the hum of conversation. In the SHU, there was an almost morose quiet, punctuated by the sound of metal gates opening and closing, and the clang of food trays being delivered and collected. He was haunted by all things he'd missed. I think about going to walk barefoot on the grass. I dream about being able to do anything I want, anytime I want to do it. Have any type of food, or look at the stars at night. Simple things. Once I was being pushed on a gurney into the local Crescent City Hospital for a knee operation, and I heard a baby cry. I said, "Wait a minute," the guard said, "it's just a baby." I hadn't heard one in a decade. It struck me, wow, that's life, you know. I even miss my old mangy mutt, Goliath, too. I miss my dog. Then there was the dread of a cell phone. There were only two types of phone calls an inmate could receive at Pelican Bay: a serious illness in the family or a death. On August 23, 1996, the feared phone call came. The death of any loved one could tear at the heart, but the loss of a young loved one hurts even more. Renee's nephew, Mark, his older brother's son, died unexpectedly from an aneurysm. He was only 15 years old. Boxer remembered that he'd recently visited me at Pelican Bay along with my son Bobby. They were friends. Mark had the letters Mir embroidered over the bill of his baseball cap. It stood for Mark Enriquez and Renee Enriquez. In honor of his father and me, I was touched. Tragically, it was a symbol of Mark's young love for two men. The sadness was magnified by the reality that Boxer, locked up in prison for most of the dead boy's life, could do nothing to help. He wanted to cry, but instead, he had to choke back his emotions. Tears were a luxury a mafioso couldn't afford to show. It was considered weakness. Prison staff were standing there listening as he received the news. He didn't even know then. And how could a Mexican mafia killer expect any comfort? It all seemed so cold, and it was. One of the most difficult things for me to do, according to Boxer, is to wait for those calls. The most profound fear I have, continued Boxer, is getting that call about the death of my parents. His father, who has suffered a stroke and has trouble articulating words, is in his late 70s, and his mother is 4 years younger. Renee knows that I've caused them a lot of emotional pain, and I wish I could take it all back. Now, in their last years, he can't be there to help them. I wait for my parents to leave me, and I can't be by their sides, he said regretfully. I have to be hundreds of miles away and wait for that phone call, and some stranger to advise me in a cold, standoffish way that they're dead. You want more than a phone call when your parents die. It's a reality I find difficult to face. Meanwhile, his older brother Mark was dying from AIDS, hepatitis C, and cirrhosis after years of intravenous drug use, in and out of prison, and having sexual intercourse with a wife who died from AIDS. Everyone is starting to die around you, noted Renee, and it also brings you to the realization that you are missing life. The irony of Boxer Enriquez feeling sorrow over impending death is not lost on him. I mean, we, MA, are the brokers of death. We kill people and joke about it with a black, wicked humor without any regard for human life. Then it happens to our family or us, and it takes us aback. We're mortal. Our families are mortal. How dare God do this to us? The cessation of life humbles everybody. It's a piercing truth everyone has to accept in the end. Renee had that figured out. That's one that's humbled me, is death. Prison visits in the later years became more and more difficult for his parents. During his 10 years at Pelican Bay, his mom Lupe said, "It becomes so sad, like you buried your son, but he's not buried. In everything you do, dinner time, celebrations, something is missing. I cry a lot for my son. No one can see inside a mother's heart, the pain, suffering, hopes that I have over and over to see him before I die. That's the only thing I wish to make my life complete. But that's not in my hands. Eventually, I'll die waiting." Besides the imminent death of his parents, other things were gnawing at Renee's psyche. The 2 grown children he had were in reality almost strangers. Only Bobby ever came to visit him at Pelican Bay, 6 trips. How much of a father can someone be during prison visits? Boxer was proud that Bobby became the first member of our family to graduate from college. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there to celebrate the achievement. His other boy, Renee Jr., gave him a baby grandson and granddaughter, neither of whom their imprisoned grandpa has ever seen. He wants to hold them, see their little smiles, and hear their laughter. His parents and son Bobby were the only immediate family members who ever came to visit him during 10 years at Pelican Bay. Boxer's stark realization was that he had gravitated toward gang violence and then blew my whole life on it. In retrospect, it was a terrible waste. I often think of the phrase, "This is a wasted life," and that's how I feel. I wasted my whole damn life. There are so many regrets. If I could change it all by the snap of my fingers, I would. More and more Boxer yearned for release, but he truly didn't know how to break the grip of the black hand. He began to discuss his frustrations with his trusted confidant during visiting days at Pelican Bay. The no-contact visits required shoe inmates to communicate through a glass window via closed-circuit telephones, and Boxer knew correctional officers sometimes monitored the conversations. In May 2002, during a Saturday and Sunday visit, he verbalized considerations he had about leaving Laeme in a more direct manner. "This is so much bullshit. I'm tired of all the politics. Every time I come out here visiting booths, it's politics. Politics, every damn visit. If it's not me battling for my turf or fighting with business partners that I don't want to do business with anymore, it's guys, carnales, going to kill this person or that person, or do this or that. It's ridiculous." He was a serious, short, stocky, tobacco-chewing ex-Marine who spoke with the Western drawl and wore cowboy boots and shirts, tan jeans, a bow tie, and a big silver belt buckle he'd won riding bulls during a rodeo competition at the Camp Pendleton Marine Base. Madrid served on a ship offshore during President Ronald Reagan's war on the island of Grenada and spent vacation time hunting big game with a bow and arrow. The former Marine didn't need to watch an old TV episode of Superman to know that he believed in truth, justice, and the American way. Madrid spent 4 months reading confiscated mafia letters and ran profiles on the MA members housed at Pelican Bay State Prison. During his research, he came to the opinion that Boxer Enriquez seemed to be the most influential Mexican mafia figure and one of the most intelligent. Laeme was looking at Enriquez as their leader, thought the lieutenant. He also noticed a certain thoughtfulness that he felt was out of character for a mob hitman. In one of Boxer's letters he read, Madrid noted, he was talking about sunrises and sunsets and the fact that he wanted to hold his kids. While serving as a correctional officer years earlier, he had a few random conversations with Boxer and came away thinking that he had a mean mafia attitude with a killer look in his eyes. The man unfolding before him now seemed different. Also, the lieutenant monitored visits and heard Boxer talk about the continuing frustrations of his existence in Laeme. He thought the time might be right to make a move, so he secretly set up a meeting without the mafioso's knowledge. Boxer was dressed in his white boxer shorts, t-shirt, and tennis shoes. There was a handcuff key hidden inside his mouth and, as always, a knife secreted in his rectum, prison style. He knew Daryl Night Owl Baca still wanted him dead, and he was ready to strike first if a fresh opportunity arose. As prison policy dictated, he was handcuffed and leg-chained as 2 guards escorted him to the infirmary. A sudden call to the doctor's office alone didn't alarm him. Boxer was part of an experimental interferon treatment program for hepatitis C. Every 6 months, medical attendants took his vital signs and gave him a physical examination to make sure he was a sustained responder. In the back of his mind, another curiosity alert was going off. The escorts were acting strangely, he remembered. Earlier, the floor officer who delivered breakfast had a big round-eyed look that telegraphed something different was going on. Boxer guessed that the guard's instincts signaled more trouble between him and Baca and the fact that they both had knives. Or maybe another inmate dropped a kite to administrators about the Baca Enriquez feud. Near the end of his medical visit, Boxer's floor officer slid up and said, "The secret squirrels want to see you." "What do you mean, secret squirrels?" "Lieutenant Madrid, the IGI, he wants to talk to you." "You want to talk to him?" "Sure." Boxer never refused to talk to the IGIs. Why not talk to him? They always wanted something. Maybe a cop had been threatened and they wanted him to smooth out the friction. As far as he was concerned, a good rapport with prison staff wasn't a bad thing. I had to live with them every day. Periodic accommodations were made to make life easier for both sides. Some correctional officers, against policies, had at times let Boxer and a few other mafioso out on the tier together to talk. A few female guards on occasion even offered sexual favors or just mild flirting. In exchange, mafiosi would make sure guards weren't shanked, speared, or gassed. There was always an undercurrent of tit-for-tat behavior. Contrary to popular belief, there is even an unwritten understanding among inmates that allows for correctional officers to give a beat down to a convict who truly deserves it. In any event, Boxer knew that when the shit hits the fan, they, prison staff, have to know that you are a stable personality they can go to. In addition to his escort, additional correctional officers came out and cleared the corridors. It was done in a way that dripped of secrecy. "What's going on?" asked Boxer. "We want to make sure no one sees you." "I don't care," scoffed the bold mafioso. Yet, inside, he began to feel something big was happening. This was not a routine visit. He asked again, "What the hell is going on?" Boxer was led to a small hideaway holding cell located near the prison library. Correctional officers removed his restraints through a slot in the metal mesh door, and he took a seat on the toilet and waited. A distinct fear that was unfamiliar to him crept into his brain. "They're going to approach you," he thought. I knew I was susceptible. The pace of his heart quickened. His mind raced, and thoughts that threatened his loyalty to the mafia code of silence. "Don't do it, Renee," said the voice in his head. "Don't let them talk you into it. Just hear what he has to say and ask to go."